Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Do you wonder why housing prices are so high? Do you wonder why we can't seem to afford a house anymore when your parents, my parents, our grandparents were able to buy houses? It was sort of just a thing that you did. As you got a little older, maybe you're in your late 20s or in your 30s, you bought a house. You had a family. You had a place to live. You weren't living in an apartment or a box in the sky, those kind of condos. You had a backyard. Maybe it wasn't that big. Maybe you just had a townhouse. But you had a house. Now, of course, not everybody is able to do that, but that was sort of the typical North American view or goal that people had. And it seems like now house prices have gone insane. So today we're going to review a video on why housing prices are so high and what are the causes of that increase.
More than just an appreciating asset, homeownership is a rite of passage.
In Canada's hot housing market, when a for sale sign goes up, it's quickly replaced with sold.
Greater Vancouver area has cooled in recent months. It's still expensive. The average home price more than $1.1 million.
Home ownership in Canada.
$1.1 million. Yeah, okay. Yeah, it's all fine because we're all millionaires now, right?
Is quickly becoming an out-of-reach fantasy for many Canadians, as the days of being able to afford a quality home in many Canadian cities, especially on a single income, are increasingly confined to the past. Put simply, the opportunity afforded previous generations no longer exists, and the problem seems to only be getting worse. Over the past 2 decades, home prices in Canada have increased by 375%, soaring to a national average of $816,000 in 2022 and over $1 million in British Columbia, a 24% increase in just 1 year. But even more important,
yeah, and our salaries have all gone up by like 30%, right? So everybody's making more money.
Importantly, has been the abject deterioration in the house price to income ratio, more commonly referred to as affordability. Since 2005, no other G7 nation has seen the gap between home prices and incomes diverge as much as Canada. And when compared next to the United States, the level of disparity is downright.
What the hell is this? Seriously. What is happening? I'm jealous of you guys in the States, man. Look at this. It's like 200,000, 300,000, whatever. Okay, fine. Yeah, that's people are making, more money. House prices are going up, but it's reasonable. Then Canada's like, we got the same sort of increase with the amount of money, right? Okay, about similar. But then the house prices is like, boom, way off the chart.
Shocking, especially when you consider Canada is the second largest and one of the least densely populated countries in the entire world. And the results of this decrease in affordability are plain for everyone to see, with the recent poll revealing 36% of young Canadians having given up on their dream of home ownership altogether. A feeling, as a 32-year-old renter, I can certainly relate to.
Well, it's incredibly expensive. Ideally, you want house prices to be somewhere about 3 to 4 times of income. We look in most of Canada, historically, that's what we've been at. Now in a Vancouver or Toronto, you get multiples of 12, 15, 20, which is completely unaffordable, particularly if you don't have a fair bit of inherited wealth.
Yeah, well, in British Columbia, you're right. I mean, we used to talk about the rain, we used to complain about the Canucks. Now it's all housing affordability all the time. And you walk through neighborhoods, you talk to other homeowners, they know what every single house is sold for and when and to who, and what it means for their own pocketbook.
Big.
And this is why people live at home with their parents. It's because the housing is expensive, and then the rent actually is pretty expensive as well. At least in some of these cities, when you go there, you're like, hey, what can I get a 1-bedroom apartment? Well, yeah, but it's going to be like $2,000 or more. which is super expensive a month. And then if you best idea is to get like a roommate, have like a 2-bedroom, and maybe pay like $2,800 or something like that. But it's still really expensive. So a lot of people just continue to live at home in their parents' house, and hopefully when your parents die, they leave you the house, and then you could have a house when you're 45, 50 years old or whatever age.
Cities like Vancouver and Toronto have seen some of the largest price increases in the country, as houses that might otherwise be reserved for lower income Canadians have been selling for ridiculous prices.
Yeah, look at that. 1.25 million, guys. You want to live there? Look at that house. It's like, it totally needs work, at least on the outside. I don't know. Maybe it's immaculate on the inside. There's like an indoor swimming pool. It's like marble floors, 9-foot ceilings, Don't judge it by the outside, guys. Like, clearly that house is worth 1.25 million. Come on. Keep in mind this is Canadian, so in American dollars, it's probably like $950. But hey.
But this crisis in affordability isn't restricted to large metropolitan.
Look at that huge house, guys. Huge. It's like 10,000 square feet. Almost $1.5 million. That's like a 1,200-foot home. I don't know. Like, it does not look big. Sure, we're getting one angle, but this is insane. This is why I do not live in Toronto anymore. I could not stand being in Toronto for this exact reason. You got all this traffic, and then you got to deal with like crazy house prices. You can never own anything. So just be happy with your box in the sky. Your apartment that you're paying $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 for. Be happy. Just good. That's all you need.
And centers. The same is happening in many smaller cities too.
Get out of here. Almost $3.1 million. For this bungalow. What is this? 1,500 square feet. Usually bungalows are around that size. This is ridiculous. I'm sorry. I don't even understand. And the fact that somebody actually paid that amount of money for this house, when you look at it, you're like, this house is probably from like the 60s. The person who bought it paid like $100,000 for it, if that. And it's just it's like $3.1 million now. Basically, sell your house, and move to Thailand, and just live on your $3 million.
Like Victoria, my hometown. I met with the local real estate agent, Alex Carroll, to get a sense of how house prices have changed in this community.
From Victoria all the way up to the Malahat, we've seen prices grow by 71%. That's detached homes in the last 5 years.
In the last 5 years, 71%, and that's kind of Victoria, the greater Victoria area.
Victoria as a whole.
As a whole.
And of that, 65% in the last 3 years. So actually the one right behind us here, I helped clients sell just a couple months ago.
Yeah.
They sold for 1.848, but actually purchased the home for less than $1 million in 2016.
Wow.
For about $950,000 or so.
So in 5 years, they made like almost $1 million for like $900,000, something like that. Okay. How does that make any sense? Did they make massive improvements to it? Like, I don't understand. This is ridiculous. And how would anybody, like, you don't have a house already, right? You're just somebody who's been working. You're 32 years old, whatever. You've been working for 8 years, whatever it is, 10 years. You got $100,000 saved up. You're like, I want to buy a house, or $50,000, whatever. You are not going to be able to afford a $1.8 million home. And I don't know how big this house is, so maybe you're going to get something more reasonable. But the prices are insane. I don't get it. This is, you got to start a commune, and like everyone's got to like get like 10 people together to buy a single house.
Wow, so that's price of that home almost doubled in 5-6 years.
Yep.
This rapid and unprecedented rise in home prices across Canada begs the obvious question: what's driving this increase in prices, and is there something we can do to get them under control?
Yes.
Well,
please.
just like any other item, it really is driven by demand and supply. This is basic economics, and the problem we have is we've been restricting supply with all kinds of measures, usually artificial measures, and artificially restricting supply. And in doing so, the only way for the market to respond is to increase prices. That's really the only possible outcome.
Just like any other economic good, supply and demand determine the price of housing. If there is an increased demand for homes without an equal increase in supply, housing prices will go up. It is, quite literally, Economics 101.
Well, I'm glad we've identified that our government is incapable of doing Economics 101. The basic intro class, they're like, oh, I don't know what's wrong. I don't know what's going on. It's just, there's people who own houses.
So what exactly has been happening to the supply and demand of housing in Canada?
You know, the supply has dwindled, the demand has grown. British Columbia and Vancouver specifically is a very desirable place to live. And so you just don't have enough of the product you need in order to house everyone who wants it.
It's not normal in economics that you would see persistently high prices in housing and no supply response. Experts estimate that we are about 1 million homes short of being able to meet demand. What happened? Why can't we build those million homes? Prices were high. The market was signaling we need more resources going into housing. Why didn't the market react? Well, because the market wasn't allowed to react, because cities wouldn't allow homes to be built.
Yeah, local government.
He said they need 1 million homes. Is he talking about like all of Canada? He must be talking about all of Canada, not just BC. That's still crazy. That's a lot of homes, man.
Governments are terrible for NIMBYism. Not in my backyard, stopping everything they possibly can. Every week it feels like, you read of another couple councils who have turned down perfectly good projects simply because of a very minor issue.
Provincial and municipal governments are the main cause of the high housing prices. There is obviously a contributing factor, but to me this is the main cause, and this works through restricting supply.
Quite simply, municipal governments in Canada restrict the supply of housing by creating artificial obstacles in the way of certain kinds of development. The first hurdle to be overcome are regulations around zoning, which determines what can be built in a particular area, whether it be residential, commercial, or industrial.
Oh my god, this makes me think of SimCity. You guys ever play SimCity? I don't know, now I want to play SimCity. It looks like I'm looking at the city map. I'm going to put my houses here, my commercial there.
Consider a Terminal Avenue between Science World and Home Depot in Vancouver, right? So that's a pretty nice stretch, walking distance to downtown. It is part of downtown. That's largely industrial land. Why is that still industrial? Really basically parking lots and car dealerships. So there are large pockets like this right in Vancouver that are underutilized. And even if you are totally within your existing zoning and everything, it's no secret that approvals in Vancouver take years.
Even after a proposed project is zoned correctly, in many instances, the bureaucratic hurdles facing new construction are only just beginning.
You know what's interesting? Like, he's talking about, like, why is that land industrial, etc., etc., and he's like, why don't they make it housing? This is one reason I like Calgary. They have seemed to very well planned out this city. Like, they have put the roads in, it seems like they had a great idea about the roads and the neighborhoods and like where the commercial stuff would be. It just feels like they planned it well.
A fact made abundantly clear to me after speaking with the president and CEO of Reliance Properties, John Stovall.
This building behind us is called the Northern Junk, and it's got that name because it used to be a junkyard dealer. It's a property that we bought in 2010, and at that time the building had been vacant for 30 odd years. The family who owned it just didn't want to do anything with it. And here we are 12 years later. Last August, we finally got our permit to redevelop this property and add much needed housing. And even now, a year later, we're still waiting for our building permit.
So from the kind of period of first
paper submission to shovels in the ground, that was how long exactly?
Actually, it'll be about 13 years.
13 years.
Yeah.
It's not uncommon now to wait longer for your building permit than it takes to actually build the building that you need getting the permit for.
Really?
And that's a huge carrying cost, right? You talk about affordable housing, think of the carrying cost, the mortgage on that property, having to keep people in trades kind of at bay waiting and trying to get supplies.
The significant delays imposed on new construction by government create a tremendous deal of uncertainty for those developing the project, leading to less people willing to take on expensive housing builds or demanding a higher return if they do.
So there's too many risks is what it is. Like to develop it's a risky business, super risky.
Yeah.
And when you start adding supply chain issues, rising material costs that are completely out of your control, and you just take it on the chin.
The effect.
Well, definitely like COVID caused building materials to go way up. So I know that's an increase in price. But then, like, even as I think of this, like, my friend is a housing inspector for residential, and he literally tells me all the time, he's like, hey, I go to these houses, you would be so surprised that of the quality of work that they put into these new homes, like new builds. A lot of them are like shitty workmanship. So you get like, you spend, I don't know, $800,000 or whatever it is on this new house. The workmanship, the quality is subpar. It's not done well. And it's just like, okay, so I'm overpaying, first of all, for a house. And then the quality of the house I'm getting is not good. You're going to overpay for something that's not great quality.
Of these delays on the cost of housing are immeasurable. You know, typically a developer will purchase land or an existing building to renovate for housing, you know, with an element of borrowed money. That's just the way the real estate industry works. Mm-hmm. So the longer you have to carry that acquisition loan up until the point you're ready to deliver construction, that's just a linear increase in costs. And more recently, you know, we've had projects that while we're waiting for permits in the last 24 months, where construction costs have gone up by almost 35%. So if we'd started them, you know, 2 years ago, we'd have been able to sell them for less.
Material and labor is probably up 20% year over year. So as you can imagine what that does to your bottom line.
How is labor up 20%? I don't understand. How is labor up 20%? Because my labor in an office job in the corporate America or whatever has not gone up 20%. Nobody's paying me 20% more. Well, here's 1% every year, that kind of thing. Even though, you know, you're getting back in your performance review, you know, it's saying, oh, well, you know, you did a really good job. You exceeded expectations, or at least you met expectations. They don't give you anything. So how is this labor cost in building construction so expensive or more expensive, going up 20%? I don't understand. Do I need to switch jobs?
In addition to the cost of delays and bureaucratic red tape, government increases the price of new housing construction in another, more traditional way as well, taxing the bejesus out of it.
One of the most identifiable increases in development costs are taxes and government charges. You know, in 2018, I did a study of what the government charges and taxes were as a percentage of a home, and it was 26%. So 26% of your purchase price is going to the government through taxation and charges. So I've recently updated that. We're well over 30% now.
The problem with government is they tax housing like they're taxing cigarettes. You know, there's all sorts of crazy taxes on cigarettes because they're trying to get rid of smoking. Okay. But why are we taxing housing the same way? We're not trying to get rid of housing. We should be trying to get more housing. We can't tax our way to affordability, and yet government continually tries to do it.
But I think the government feels like, hey, people are making more money off of housing. We need a piece of the action. This is a great way for us to make money. Like, doesn't it kind of feel like that? Like, really? If this is such like a basic thing that we should all be able to have, why are the taxes so much?
But if the price of housing is truly determined by supply and demand, then surely government restricting supply is only half of the story. What about demand? Specifically, the often decried speculators, foreign or otherwise, who are commonly accused of inflating the price of homes.
We know there's speculation, and that's going to happen in any market where you see shortages and price increases, right? That if housing prices are going up 10, 15, 20% a year, that's going to attract investors and speculators, and that 20% increase quickly turns into a 40% one.
It's for this reason the government of BC introduced a speculation tax in 2018, hoping to disincentivize speculators from buying up much-needed housing supply simply to expand their portfolio wealth.
So is this like foreign investors and people who are just like buying houses are like, we think the house price is going to go up because they have been going up 7 years at least, if not more. In general, people think house prices go up, at least in like Toronto and Vancouver and these bigger cities. So they're just sitting there like, yeah, we think the house price is going to go up, so we're going to buy it, and then we're going to sell it in a year and a half or two. It's like, okay, like this is pretty common. Like I know a lot of people, if you talk to people like, oh, what should I do? What should I invest? Pretty well people just say like buy a house. It's generally you see that people sell a house and it looks like they're making tons of money. So that happens. So I know people who have like 3-4 houses. It's like one person that owns like 3 houses. And they're like, well, my mom stays in one, I have one, and then I have one with my partner. It's like, what? It's like, what? Why so many houses?
But since that time, house prices have only increased, leading to the obvious question: do speculation taxes actually work to bring down home prices?
Sounds like a great tax. I mean, who doesn't want to tax speculators?
Yeah.
But it doesn't actually accomplish what they said it would accomplish. And the truth is, government doesn't really care. It's not about, changing the price of housing or finding, generating revenue for housing. It's just about getting as much money into general revenue as possible. So it's nebulous, and they get to walk around and say, well, we're taxing speculators. Isn't that great? But there's no proof, and there's certainly no evidence that it's actually made housing more affordable.
The issue is, it adds another source of uncertainty for any builder or any investor in real estate. So the net effect is actually, sure, we may convert more units from being empty potentially to being occupied, but then we're building fewer units.
In addition to targeting speculation, governments across Canada have become concerned about money being pumped into the housing market for reasons more sinister than simply turning a profit. In 2020, Criminal Intelligence Service Canada found that criminal elements were using the Canadian
CSIS, for those who don't know. I once applied to work at CSIS, actually, like as a computer programmer. Didn't get in.
Canadian real estate market to launder billions of dollars. CISC found that criminals were, quote, manipulating property values and obtaining loans against overvalued real estate that are paid using proceeds of crime. In other words, criminals are bidding up housing prices to launder the maximum amount of money.
That's it. We found the reason, guys. It's those criminals who are putting all this money in. They're screwing it up for the rest of us. That's it. It's nothing we can do about it now. Those damn criminals.
An issue that has frustrated many Canadians, but maybe none more so than the vocal and passionate mayor of Port Coquitlam, Brad West.
But when you've got billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars sloshing around in this dirty blood money that's being laundered, including in the housing market, law-abiding, hardworking, normal people get hurt by it because they're having to compete with it. Because, if someone is buying real estate with money that they've gone illegally, they're not particularly concerned about getting the best possible deal. I mean, these people are paying at times, they were paying in cash. And it sets a standard that then cascades throughout the rest of the housing market.
When I sold my house years ago, literally, I remember getting multiple offers, and the real estate agent's like, hey, the best thing you want to do, like the best offer is probably one without conditions and obviously a higher price. So you get all these offers or whatever, and a lot of them are like conditional on financing, means the person has to get a mortgage or a house inspection or blah, whatever, right? and then you get the one offer, it's like conditions none. And you're like, that's the drug dealers or these criminal gangs. They're just like, yeah, we got all the cash. Here's your $500,000. Here, just take it. Go.
How is your regular working person who does everything right supposed to square up against that?
The impact on demand from money laundering and speculation may or may not be substantial, but there is no denying that the largest impact on demand for housing is simply there are more people looking to purchase a home. This increase in demand, coupled with restraints placed on supply, is what's driving up housing prices dramatically.
Yeah, it's an important question, and I think we can look at like what makes Vancouver different than Edmonton, what makes Victoria different than Winnipeg. And the simple answer is places where the population is growing faster than housing are seeing those price increases.
No,
that's what's happening here in Calgary. There's so many people moving here. The house prices are insane. Like, it's just ridiculous. And when I was in Winnipeg, the house prices were going up too. So it was no like walk in the park. People are moving there. People are trying to spend.
There's other things that are going on here that that are explaining this, and I think you identify one that does a lot of people, especially in the political establishment, don't want to go anywhere near, and that is the level of immigration to our country is at record levels.
Immigration into Canada is on pace to reach a record high in 2022, with 431,000 new permanent residents expected to arrive.
What? That's like 500,000 almost. Are we like how many people are in Canada right now? Are we like 40? Are we at 40 right now? 40 million. Let me check this. Okay, it says here the population of Canada is, as of 2021, because I guess we don't have the latest, is 38.25 million. Okay? 38.25 million. We are what? The second biggest country in the world. California has 39.24 million. California has 1 million more people than all of Canada. What the hell? Okay, I don't understand. And even then, we're bringing in 500,000 basically immigration every year. I guess that's not even what is that, like 2%? 500,000 on 10 million would be 5%. Now we're doubling. We're saying, oh, just round up to 40. So actually, it's only 1%. It's about 1%. 1.2% of our population every year is immigration. Increase. We're increasing our population by 1.2% roughly every year. See, that seems crazy. Is that crazy? I don't know.
And nearly 500,000 expected the year after that. That represents an 80% increase from just 15 years ago, and more than 3 times the number per capita as welcomed by the United States.
Well, is that including their illegals that are constantly coming across the border from Mexico? Does it?
It's obvious to see how this increase in population will massively increase demand for housing.
You know what? And two, just look at what we're showing here right now. This is a suburb, right? It's a suburb. It's just a pile of houses. So it's like, hey, here's what you need to do. You need to buy one of these houses and live in this little, I mean, the house is big, sure, but like live on this property and it's packed with everybody else and you're all there and it's just like a nameless face living in a house. I don't know. I don't know if I like this. It just seems like you're so packed in. Everyone's packed in. But at least you got a house, so just be happy. I would rather have some acres. Like 40 acres or something. That would be enough. Have some space. I guess you get the benefits of being in a city, but it's just like we're all like living in these just rows and rows of houses, and I don't know. Is this how we're supposed to be?
And without an equal increase in supply, house prices will continue to rise. It seems like the federal government's agenda of massively increasing immigration is at odds with the plans of many municipalities to restrict the development of new homes.
Mr. Trudeau.
We have a federal government that wants to let 500,000 people a year into Canada. We have in British Columbia 110,000 immigrants last year, which is a staggering amount. And we have a seasonal workforce in BC of 150,000. Those federal policies are going to cause this problem to continue to be protracted because we don't have housing to meet today's demand, let alone another 110,000 people coming next year. We had, historically more 30, 40,000. We're tripling that number.
Our problem is just a classic one of, the federal government making decisions there, and our provinces, particularly Ontario and BC, not filtering that through into their housing supply decisions, and then those not getting filtered through to a municipal side.
Now, I happen to believe that immigration is a good and important thing for a country. I also think a country is allowed to determine what an appropriate level of immigration is. In recent times, you have seen just this move to say that the answer is always to increase, despite the fact that it comes with it a number of considerations, like where are you going to house all these people?
So what's the solution to all of this? How
Stop immigrants from coming in our country. Shut them down. No immigration. How
can we keep the housing market affordable while facing a massive surge in population? To find out, I went somewhere that has dealt with this exact problem and came out ahead.
So we're here in Langford, British Columbia, the city that I grew up in and watched as it radically transformed over the past 30 years. This used to be the rougher, poorer part of Victoria, but since that time, its population has tripled, its economy exploded, and yet it still has some of the most affordable homes and housing in all of Greater Victoria, and really all of British Columbia. But how exactly did they make that happen? Let's go chat with the mayor, Mr. Stu Young, who's been mayor for 30 years, and see what he has to say.
Langford's welcomed, probably from a percentage increase, almost more new people than almost any other municipality in the province, if not more than any other.
I like this. Get shit done.
And yet it still, in the Victoria context, has the reputation for having some of the most affordable housing and homes. So how did you do that, or what are some of the key components?
Well, the simple thing is get rid of red tape bureaucracy. If you take 5 years to rezone a piece of property in a municipality, you're pretty well killing economic development. So we try and have a fast process, and as long as we build supply, that's the biggest thing, is making sure there's supply for people to buy, which then keeps the prices a little bit more stable.
But this wasn't always the way Langford was. Before Stu Young became mayor 30 years
Radio
ago,
Shack.
Langford was known for its high unemployment rate and lack of opportunity. That has now completely reversed, and over the past 5 years, it's been the fastest growing municipality in all of BC, and the third fastest in the entire country.
People didn't want to move to Langford before. They were leaving Langford when I was growing up. And it's because we had 20% unemployment, and things were terrible. We were called dog patch growing up, you know what I mean? So we had to fix that. If you want a vibrant community, then don't take 3 or 4 years for a rezoning, and don't put a bunch of roadblocks up that create problems in the process. You're not going to build affordable housing if it takes 4 years to do it, but I can tell you the municipality is very good when it comes to speeding things up.
Well, Langford, you can get a building through in 6 months, 8 months.
Really?
Yeah. Downtown Victoria, it can be anywhere from 3 to 5 years.
And it's weird, it seems also like with the developers and the builders, it's in other municipalities that we've been to, it seems like almost an adversarial relationship, whereas here it seems more like a partnership.
Well, 100%. I mean, that's how you build a community. Langford's done just a fabulous job of that. They really have. I mean, I don't know a better example to even compare Langford to across Canada.
I think only if we had just got to increase the supply of competent politicians, and we'll.
Hey, I say this all the time.
But there is something.
Okay, interesting comment. Got to increase the supply of competent politicians. And I'm thinking, okay, it seems like this is a multifaceted problem, right? Because we see immigration's really high, right? Which is fine. I mean, we need immigration in the country. And that's a federal mandate. So that's, our Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, who's doing that. So even Pierre Poilievre, the conservative leader, he's going to try to be like, hey, we need to, increase housing development or whatever. He doesn't really control that because that piece, other than the immigration, right, he would have some influence over. But the piece of like building the actual homes, it's like that's all seems to be done at the municipality level, which is like your city or your town. So it's your mayor. So it just seems like really everything is it's a multifaceted issue, right? Like it's not just one thing. And not to mention there's different expenses such as material and labor costs that they talked about, but you really need to vote in your mayoral candidate for your city or your county or municipality or whatever you want to call it. You need to vote in good politicians who are going to help speed that up. I think we always look at the federal government as like, oh yeah, you need to do something, blah, but they can only affect like a certain piece of the puzzle. Like a lot of it has to be done at different levels.
Thing that is completely out of the control of municipalities. In fact, for the most part, it's completely out of the control of any level of government. And that's the interest rate set by the Bank of Canada.
Oh, yes.
Since the 2008 financial crisis, Canada has seen historically low interest rates. This was a policy implemented by our central bank to allow commercial banks to borrow money for cheap from the Bank of Canada. In turn, these commercial banks could reduce their interest rates and allow Canadians to acquire cheap credit for things like mortgages. In response, housing prices rose as the aggregate demand for homes increased and Canadians were able to qualify for larger loans, leading to bidding wars and an increase in dangerous variable rate mortgages. A type of mortgage.
You say it like it's such a thing. Dangerous variable rate mortgages. Okay, I don't know. I always did variable rate whenever I was doing a mortgage, and I found it always saved me money. It's cheaper than being fixed. Although now with the way the interest rates have gone now, I guess that's a different thing. Like, let me just check to see what the interest rate has gone up to. I know, like, on vehicles, it's insane. You go to, like, lease a vehicle, it's like 7%. The current interest rate here in Canada from the Bank of Canada, or the prime rate, is 7.2%. And that just increased, I want to say like a week or two ago. I'm recording this in July 22nd of 2023. So I think like a week or two ago it went up because I got a notice about it. It went up anyways. It went from like 6.7% to 7.2%. And I remember prior to that, I think we were like in the 1% range, something like that, like a couple of years ago, maybe less than, maybe only a year ago. It wasn't that long ago. It's just with this COVID recession bullcrap, this is what's happened. They paid out a lot of CERB money. I think some people had to give CERB money back. I don't know. It's just, this has gone crazy.
Mortgage where the interest rate fluctuates depending on the actions of the Bank of Canada.
And it's pretty simple. I think everyone understands that when rates are low, people can borrow more. It's more easier to service the debt. So on the same income, you can afford to pay more. And most people do.
The most important thing for housing, like it's very rate sensitive. So a lot of cheap money and credit over the last couple of years has obviously driven a lot of dollars into hard assets, real estate being one of them.
But these record low interest rates are not guaranteed to last forever. In fact, in an attempt to cool inflation, the Bank of Canada has already begun to increase rates. This should have the effect of lowering demand for mortgages and thus lowering the price of housing. But it also risks ensnaring people with variable rate loans who have already seen their monthly payments jump significantly.
I don't like the phrasing, the ensnaring people, because it's a special case right now that, yeah, looking back, you're like, well, the interest rates went up from whatever, 2% to like 7.2% as of me recording this video. And if you were in a variable rate, that's a huge jump. And if you went in at fixed and maybe you locked in at 3%, you're saving like 4% interest payments, which is a lot of money. It's like hundreds of dollars, if not thousands of dollars, right? Depending on your mortgage. But in general, the variable rate mortgage has been quite good historically, at least for me. I always had good success because they'll give you a better rate than they will on a fixed. A fixed mortgage will always have a higher interest rate than a variable. Just now, particularly now, is not a good time. But then, do you want to take a fixed rate mortgage now? Like, it's at 7.2%. So if you're buying a house now, you're going to be like, hey, I'm going to lock in at like 7.2% or 6.5% now. Like, what? That seems stupid because the rate's going to go down. So if anything, you want to take a variable rate mortgage because it's going to go, like, it'll go down in the future. You don't want to be locked in for 5 years, or maybe what you do is you take it and you like lock in for a year or 3 years or like a shorter period of time than the 5-year typical locking yourself in at that interest rate.
Which, if left unchecked, could trigger a catastrophic train of mortgage defaults.
When interest rates are low, increases from that point, even small increases, are very consequential. It's one thing to have interest rates at 10% to go to 11%. No one really notices that. But when you have interest rates at 1% and they go to 2%, so the same 1 percentage point increase, that's huge.
Interest rates drive what people can pay. It's going to have a dramatic impact on the ability of people to borrow money.
And people are going to be handing their keys in. Yeah. Because, interest rates go up another, they're saying it might even jump a point coming up.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. A jump a point coming out. I think back then when he was talking, it was like 3%. Oh, jump a lot more than a point. Jump 4 points. I always heard this too. They'd be like, people going to be handing their keys in. People's keys going to be handed in. I'm like, did people actually hand in their keys? Really? Did people actually hand in their keys? I don't know. I don't know if they did. I know people have a harder time paying for it, clearly, because it's more expensive. But people are buying houses still like crazy. There's somebody I know who literally, with her husband, bought a house, okay? They already had a pre-existing house. They bought a new house. So they tried to sell their existing house, couldn't sell it for the price that they wanted. So now they have 2 homes with 2 mortgages that they're paying for. And they're just like, no one wants to buy our house at the price we want to sell it for. I don't understand. How are you affording to pay for 2 houses?
And that's going to absolutely decimate families.
It is the one sure thing that will change the price of housing is interest rates, for sure.
But will depressed housing prices caused by the increase in interest rates actually make housing any more affordable for most Canadians?
So mortgage rates have gone up in the last 4 weeks about 150 basis points, which is absolutely massive. So London, Ontario, our house prices went down $50,000 in a single month.
Really?
Yeah, so about a 7% decrease. I think the problem is that that's not going to help that much with the affordability issue, particularly for first-time home buyers, because basically, yeah, the sticker price is lower, but now I'm paying higher mortgage payments. So it might help a little bit on the down payment side. But yeah, the monthly payments, if anything, are going to rise because it's like, okay, yeah, the principal payments are 20% less, but now my interest payments have doubled.
Right. So it's actually worse for you because you're paying more interest and you're getting less of that money in on your mortgage, which is your equity. So what you'd actually be able to take out. So the Bank of Canada and the banks or whatever, whoever collects this interest, where the hell does the interest go? I don't even know. Where does the interest go? So they charge you 7% interest. That's the Bank of Canada saying, hey, it's 7% interest. So you pay your bank whatever percent they put on top, because they're going to give you, like, if the Bank of Canada interest is 7.2, let's say, right? That's what it is right now. The bank is not just going to, lend it to you, the bank that you go to. It's not just going to lend it to you at 7.2. They're going to be like, well, we're going to charge you 8.2. We got to make something off it. So they're making a percent. And so does that mean the other 7.2 goes to the Bank of Canada or to the government? Like, I don't understand. Where does this money go? I feel like I should know the answer to this question. Maybe somebody can put this in a comment below. I don't know where the money actually goes. Where is it going? Why am I paying all this interest?
So I think we are going to see cool downs in some markets because of those higher interest rates, but we're essentially trading off one problem for another.
So what if you got your house for $200,000 or $300,000 less if your mortgage payment is still 25% higher?
For previous generations of Canadians, owning your own home was a distinctly attainable dream, something that could be aspired to and, with hard work, easily achieved. But for many young Canadians today, that dream is rapidly slipping away. Canada's housing market and its level of unaffordability is not normal, and some cities like Vancouver and Toronto are among the least affordable in the entire world, and it's not by accident. Politicians have made decisions, and we, as Canadians, are living with the result.
That's a nice part of the city, by the way, by the Parliament buildings here in Ottawa, where our federal government is. Like there's the locks just behind the Parliament buildings, where the boat locks. You can kind of see the part of them here. That's where it starts. But this area down here is so beautiful. I used to cycle this all the time. It's so nice. It's a very beautiful, beautiful spot. It's a good cycling city if you like cycling.
Results. Fortunately, there are some who are fighting back.
This annoys the hell out of me, is this idea that if you're a younger person, and I'm in my 30s as well, that, you don't want a house. You don't want a backyard. You don't want any little patch of grass. You don't want, you like living in...
I don't know if you really sold that well. Little patch of grass. Why the hell do I want a little patch of grass? Like, I feel like he didn't sell that very well. And also, I know he's trying to say, like, oh yeah, you want this. Like, you just want a condo in the sky. I don't know. It's interesting because I feel like a lot of today's younger people seem to not care about the material things so much. They want to like travel and do that type of stuff. And so why would you want a house? Because house is more upkeep. It's more work. It's like, maybe you just want a condo. You want the box in the sky. I don't know. I know he's going to go on this rant about it like, fuck you. But it's also like, I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of people who like that concept. They don't necessarily want a house.
500 square feet, that's what young people want. And so we shouldn't concern ourselves with, the type of housing that you could actually raise a family in, because young people don't want to have families. They don't want to have kids. They don't want a backyard. And I think that's just complete and utter bullshit. I'm not ready to give up like a lot of people seem to want to do. And people won't put up with it. The frustration and disappointment is already turning to anger for a lot of people. But if you're interested in a future for our kids, for our communities, we have got to find ways to...
What are the parents doing in this video right now? Why are they doing this? I don't understand. Over the kids. What? Why? Oh, this is them symbolizing a roof over their head because they can't afford a house? Is that what this is right now? We're homeless. Here. We're covering you. Be safe.
Reestablish the connection between our local economic conditions and the wages and salaries that people, the average person, make, and the ability to own a home.
Everybody deserves a job, everybody deserves a house, and if you work hard for it, you should be able to attain that, and that's really what politicians should be focusing on.
That's an interesting idea that everybody deserves a house, because I feel like that's like a very North American idea. Like, I don't know if in other countries they think that way. It just seems to be like a North American thing. Like, hey, we should all be able to have houses.
We need to make sure that housing never gets out of reach for people. That's our job as a politician. We should not be putting roadblocks in front of it. Our job is to make sure that housing is affordable and everybody has the opportunity to have a house.
So guys, I thought that was an interesting video. I feel like I learned a lot about the housing market and what's happened here. And I know this was a very Canadian-focused video, but I think the concepts and all that can be moved to any market because it would be the same sort of thing, right? Supply, demand, you know, what's slowing down building of new properties, what would speed it up, you know, material costs, labor, this type of thing, immigration. I think this is all relevant to wherever you are. So clearly in Canada here, we've made a lot of mistakes where it's not going that great. And hopefully we can correct it. I'm very jealous of the folks in the United States who sometimes you hear about these places in Texas. It's like, oh yeah, I bought this 3,000 foot home for $300,000. And I'm like, what? Even if I change that to Canadian currency and put it up to 400,000, that's like ridiculous. We would never be able to get that here. So I don't know. This has been very eye-opening. I really feel like I need to be conscious of who I am electing at the municipality, local level, like the city level, who the mayor is, who's running the municipality, and also at the federal level, like what their processes and what their stances are on immigration and increasing the interest rate, if they can even affect that. So that's a hard thing. I think it'd be more like economic decisions. How do they view, what is their economic plan? You know, are they going to, you know, suck in there? We're gonna have a lot less jobs, or are we gonna have a nice economic boom and get more jobs and money flowing in the country, etc., etc. Thanks for watching. I appreciate all of you, and I look forward to seeing you again next time.